say? Do you need to do it in
like,
secret language? Sign like secret code.
Well, they can see us now.
People can see us, but I thought you said go live.
I did, and then it was one of those
and then you pump the brakes.
It was like a take back. I was like trying to do a take back.
Oh.
There's no take backs.
See, once you hit the start, you can't stop. The train has left the station.
Wasn't that Snowpiercer movie?
Is that what the saying? What I just said? I don't know.
No, that's Speed with Keanu.
Yeah, you can't unstop this train or whatever. Speed though, good tie-in for what we'll talk about is Dennis Hopper. Dennis Hopper was an Angelino artiste and a friend of Frank Gehry. Right? Did you not know that little factoid?
Yeah.
How's is the music too loud?
I think a lot of people were friends of... No, music's fine. There's a little bit of a delay today.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I know why. I'm working on the basement where all my IT stuff is, and I have a few things disconnected, so it's probably causing a little bit of a delay. I had to. I can't. I have no. I've got the basement completely cleaned up. I know. Well, let's just do the mime. You mime through the delay, right?
So are you doing something fun with the basement that it has to be cleaned out, or it's like are you getting ready for like are you gonna fill it with like those plastic balls from like Chuck E. Cheese and just
not quite, but it is going to be kind of a romper room if you're familiar with that. So it'll be like a man cave. We're finishing it out. It's mostly done. All that's left is I'm going to stain the concrete floor. So I needed to get all the objects out of there so that and one of which was the shelf that held all my IT, my router and modem and all that. So I cobbled it together in another corner, which is temporary. So everyone, if you're mad about the lag, it's my fault, and it's never Jamie's fault. Remember, use your mime hands. Mime hands.
I thought it was like mind trick. So
mime, M-I-M-I, M-I. Am I doing good mime? No. You have to be quiet
in a
when
box.
You are, yeah, right. Like I gotta push against this way. You go like this, and then you like this, like this. Thanks for playing. Thanks for playing along.
Yeah.
So we got out the.
Right. So as we were pumping the brakes, I was gonna ask you a pop quiz question. We'll get you prepped for a pop quiz question as we're sort of warming up. Now we're doing this warm up. I really hope the warm up doesn't make it in the episode. Just put that out there.
Okay.
But,
I will duly noted.
So, Harry Bertoya.
Uh-huh.
Hello?
Yeah, I'm with you. Hold on. Let me stop the music and see if that helps with our speed. unfortunately, we might have to go without music. So Harry Bertoya, yes.
Oh, you did hear me. Okay, good.
I did. Yeah.
Harry Bertoya. Do you know who that is?
Yes.
You do.
Yeah. Right. He was a furniture designer, right?
It's like I'm like,
Or
yes.
also an architect, right? Or just furniture.
I think also an architect, but definitely famous for the furniture stuff.
Okay. And the quiz question of the day.
What's crazy is with this live stream, like you're talking, right? And I'm hearing the words, but your mouth is closed. And it's like,
Well, I never.
but there's lots of words. And so it's like a ventriloquist kind of thing. And it's weirded me out. So I'm not gonna look at you on the screen for a minute.
Okay. Fair. You're
doing it again. Eventually. You're doing that.
I did it on purpose.
All right.
It'll catch up. Give it some time.
All right. So all I was going to be pointing, I was just trying to point out that it was, I mean, this also goes with my terrible memory of names. And so I don't want to throw shade at, generation discussion about research, because I also will admit I am pretty bad about names and, now, especially when it's like, that was a weird one, puppy. What was that noise? What were we doing? You all right? Yeah, I know. Can you see her?
Not quite.
Come here.
Not quite.
Come here. No. All right.
No.
There's a lot of activity over here. All right. Anyhow, it was a good story. I totally lost my train of thought.
Bertoya.
So this was one of those moments where, like, I was shown a picture of the chair, like one of his sort of for Noel, which I recognized, like I knew the chair, I knew it was Noel and the whole bit, and but I didn't know the designer's name. Felt, feel bad because, like, I should have, but I was, talking to one of the youngins, and they were pointing this out to me about this furniture designer that they were doing research on, and kind of the etymology of this person's career and their influence and whatnot. And I was very impressed. But anyhow, just sort of it dovetailed nicely to our conversation about reading and research and trying to be, subject matter experts and all that kind of stuff. So I just was, and having the passion for all this, where you do a little exploring, right?
Yeah. Well, and I thought you were going to get at, because Bertoya and Frank Gehry teamed up on some stuff, early career stuff, early projects.
Well, I mean, we are going to maybe have a sketch, that deals with furniture. So there was sort of a thematic kind of warm up in this, but
yeah. I wonder. Yeah. We'll get into that stuff a little bit too. The how's the lag now? Is the lag any better? I mean, what do you think?
There's still lag.
Yeah. Excuse me. Well, when the edit comes out, at least it won't be lagging. because it'll edit out all that dead air. The live stream, unfortunately, is going to suffer a little bit today. So apologies to the watchers. So
We're just
anyway,
gonna blame it on Kurt's man cave.
the man cave. Yeah. Excuse me. Oh, the perhaps the next stream will be in the man cave. That could be fun. Maybe if I'm closer to the modem, it should help, right? Maybe
Oh
not.
no. I mean 2025 has been the year of Kurt recording at home, but it's been 3 homes, and in those 3 homes we've been in multiple rooms of each of the houses. And so it's been an adventure.
2 homes. Only 2 homes. It's only 2 homes. And I do agree. The
Did you
adventure.
move twice this year?
No. One time. I can only afford to move once a year.
Okay.
I think I did move.
So did you get the other move in under the wire? Is that what?
I moved inside. I moved around a lot in the old house as we were packing up stuff. And then in this house, I think I might have been facing a different direction once. But now I'm pretty settled in now. But so you think do we have enough technology to get into our formal show content, which is,
I mean,
a little bit of banter, a little bit of coffee, a little bit of sketch.
we're going to be operating without a technological net tonight, but that's okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't think about it's been working fine. Let me take a look. And then now it's not working fine. So I that's all I got.
It's just going to make me talk slower. I'm just going to just talk at a slower pace, and so that it'll all just even out for me in my head.
Okay. Thanks. And then we'll get through this. We will get through this, and then you can eat dinner if you haven't eaten dinner. Let the dogs out. Maybe watch a little Thursday night football. Or I don't know if you watch soccer as well, but anywho.
There's none on tonight.
Okay. Oh, I heard Messi won the MLS Cup, huh? Inter Miami. So they hire this guy, spend a lot of money on this guy.
Yeah.
2 years later, they win it all. So is it him?
Yes.
Or is it the team?
Well, I mean, in year 2, or this year versus last year, he had a definite cast of characters around him, which I think helped. I mean, it's a team sport. He also really didn't get injured and was just sort of playing out of his mind. So, he's still, the greatest of all time. So, and he's still playing at a level that's just, amazing.
Yeah, that's cool. How old is he?
38.
Wow. Dang. He's an old goat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and it's just, you watch a player like that and it's there aren't very many people in the sport who can just take over a game. Like just decide to, just to take it over. And you can almost see it, in the way that there's a moment where it's like, okay, he's decided this is the time for me to be the game changer. Doesn't always work, of course, but it's still, it happens a hell of a lot more with him than anybody else that I've ever watched.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's still pretty cool. I mean, it's a lot of buzz. I hear, I mean, even as a or I wouldn't say I'm not a fan, but I would say I'm not a regular consumer of televised soccer, but
right,
I still hear about it because, when you're a big deal, you're a big deal. So it's pretty cool. I think it's cool. Because now what it's at? Do they start working
it's
on
also,
World Cup?
Well, World Cup won't be till June.
Oh, but didn't they do like the drawing of the brackets or something?
The drawing. Yeah, no, they drew the brackets, so everybody effectively knows who they're playing and which days. There are still a couple spots that haven't been filled because they have some sort of playoff play-in games in some regions of the world. But yes, all the brackets are set. So there's some groups of death, and then there's some easy groups, and then there's sort of, everybody else in between. But all the games still have to be played. All the matches still have to be played. So
yeah, okay. So I got time to prepare for all that.
Yeah. There'll be an MLS season that will start.
Yeah. And then take a break.
And then hit pause for the World Cup.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. And I mean, I assume what, Messi plays Argentina? No. Did I get that right?
He plays for Argentina, yeah.
Oh, I got it right.
Captain of Argentina.
Trivia. So, hey, I know my stuff. And, yeah, well, anyway, I didn't mean to go on a super tangent for soccer, but, doing my part, right? Trying to toe that line.
You know how I am. I'm all ready. You're just trying to distract me from all the interweb connectivity stuff.
Exactly. Excuse me. Yeah, All right. So, what about coffee? Let's try and scrape that into existence. And continue the distraction.
Are you going to start the episode?
Well, we might as well. No, I mean, because the lag is the lag, and so therefore I don't want to torture the watchers too much, unfortunately. And we will then make up for it in the audio edit, is my thought. I don't know what you're, if you agree or not, but. Okay, I see the signal. So, I get what? Do you want me to hit the cue for the intro? Just in case.
This is going to be really great in the podcast episode.
Well, I mean, you got to pretend that like all the dead space will be deleted, right? So you just got to pretend. And then that's why the apology to
I'm pretending.
The apology to the watchers went out there, So
yeah, just the banter is we're hitting a high mark tonight.
It's
So-
a little disjointed. Yeah, it's definitely disjointed because of the audio. I know. I'm just pausing a little bit to give you a chance to say something back. Okay. So therefore, should we not just try and record an episode under our formula and cross our fingers that it all will work out in the audio?
So here's the countdown, folks. This is the way we used to do this. We go.
Is that not the right amount of time, Jamie? The countdown. Welcome. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
190.
Episode 190.
190.
190.
We are
90.
90.
Do you pronounce the T? 90?
I tried to.
90.
90. 190. 90. 90. 190. 90. Oh God. People are we're gonna lose people left and right on that one. Yeah, sorry, people. We're getting into
Who are these guys?
syntax errors. So,
well, I mean,
how's it going?
You know, we're here.
Yeah. We're pretending that the lag is not there.
Right.
So
this is not a proof of life video. Like,
it kind of looks like
I'm Jamie. I'm in Austin, Texas. That's Kurt. Kurt's in Flint, Michigan.
In an undisclosed
You're joining us
man cave.
Well, apparently Kurt is building one, in the basement. Maybe a Fallout shelter. Fallout Studio is moving north, apparently. So
it's a safe haven. So, we should probably maybe, to avoid some torture with the lag, maybe just talk a little bit about, the specifics, right? So, yeah. So what's in the cup, Jamie? What do you got?
I've decided to go. I've decided to go with Intelligentsia. Their frequency flavor has a little bit of brown sugar note to it. Quite nice.
It sounds great. I had when did I have some Intelligentsia? I recently traveled out west to visit my brother, and I think it was in Chicago. We were at the train station at Union Station in Chicago, and which I think Intelligentsia has. Don't they have roots in Chicago? Am I wrong, or is it somewhere else?
I should look that up. because I do get them from time to time, and but that would be research,
Yeah,
and
that's
that
too
would
hard.
require reading. It's a lot of steps.
And
a lot of steps in there.
Yeah, typing, maybe a little typing.
Names you might have to remember. Places, dates.
Whew. Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot for anyone these days. So in what I'm drinking, is I think we're still working through some Starbucks Pike Place, right? Which is a nice, middle of the road flavor. But I do have some gift coffee from my brother-in-law Joe, who listens to the podcast, and so once we crack that open, we're gonna have to have a serious conversation with no internet lagging, because Joe is curious for that conversation to be had. So that's where we're at.
Is everybody okay?
What? Did you hear the dog?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm surprised. I thought the noise cancellation would pick that up. Oh, my dog loves to have. She has a new habit now. She just goes ballistic when she gets let out the front door. Just has to scream her head off. And so, yeah. Sorry, folks.
She's like, free at last.
Oh, I know. It's terrible. It's so annoying. She doesn't do it with me, though, because I don't tolerate. I have zero tolerance policy for howling in at the door and then through the door,
freedom
and outside. No, yeah, I have no tolerance for dog freedom. It's 100%. Capture, right? Keep the dog inside. No escape dog. But yeah, sorry about that. They just pick up these random habits, and then they keep them going. Like they go, oh, well, I did it yesterday, now I could do it today, and I'll do it some more, and then tomorrow I'll do it some more. It'll just go on and on forever. So, that's the life of a dog. Ain't it? Is it? I don't know. At least my dogs.
On that note, I don't know.
Should we just get into a conversation, a long delayed conversation about Frank Gehry?
Yeah, let's try and let's try. This will be interesting, folks. So,
well, so what we have here is a bit of a panel of an homage to Frank Gehry, who passed away last week. And so it's been, sad. I mean, sad, but also, a long career, 96 years, worked a long, long time. I don't think he ever stopped working. He really enjoyed what he was doing in design and architecture. And so we actually have some sketches from Jamie, some photographs from me, and then some sketches from my students, which I was able to convince them to produce some whiteboard sketches of different Frank Gehry projects for the last day of class, to kind of keep it light and fun. And sort of use our tool of the sketch as architects to sort of celebrate, the career and life of Frank Gehry. So, um, I mean, Jamie, you want to bring up, your sketches real quick? Go first and talk about the sketch and then some of the drawings.
Yeah, and just as we're starting to talk about the sketches, I wanted to kind of echo what Kurt was saying in terms of um, someone like Frank Gehry, and we'll kind of probably say this multiple times, so give us a little bit of grace, but clearly a legend, and somebody who was a uh, influencer before there were influencers of architects, and in a way that no one really expected, probably, um, in terms of the trajectory of his career. When you're, I think, but at the same time, there's a consistency to it that I think is sort of remarkable, in terms of the link between art and architecture, and sort of the irreverence, as well as the respect for design and history and all the other nuances of it. It was somebody who loved the art form, and loved the practice, and I think that's really really evident in the work, but also was driven in a way that very few people are. And I think that influence resonated with lots of people in lots of different ways. But then also, because we have this podcast, I think that there's this other element of this that, um, many people have said in the last few days, that this was an architect, where a lot of people don't even know the names of architects, and the concept of a star architect, probably revolved around someone like him, as well as many others, sort of in the architecture community, and somewhat translating into popular culture. But this was an individual who influenced a lot of actors, artists, um, politicians, just general public. He was on The Simpsons. He played himself on The Simpsons. I mean, it's in a sort of a self-deprecating kind of way too. And I think that, but then he also had buildings that people were actually in the going to make actual trips to go see, a building, a special trip. And it wasn't just architects doing that. As an architecture junkie, if anybody's listened to this podcast before, and Kurt and I, like any other architect that, designer that you probably have ever met, we're always sort of making those, side quests to go see a building when we're traveling with other friends or family. His Guggenheim Bilbao was that building that people literally went to go see, that weren't just architects. It became sort of a cultural touch point, a historical touch point, and an art and architecture touch point, where that building and the realization of a project like that and the scale of it, it did have the Bilbao effect. That was a real thing. And I think a real thing for people like us who are designers and architects, but also a real thing in hundreds of years, with a building. There's certainly buildings in the world that have had that effect, and artists and architects who've had that effect. But not in modern, not in modern times, not like this, or at least not in many many decades. I think that that's sort of my starting point, for some of this conversation. And I was just going to read a quote, from another architect that I admire, Daniel Libeskind. He posted, in a sort of in a tribute to Frank Gehry, titling it "Saying Goodbye to a Friend." He said, Frank Gehry should be celebrated for his extraordinary originality, an architect who certainly changed the course of architecture by underlying that it was first an art and only secondarily a service. He was a friend whose works were challenging, surprising, and provocative. And I think, very fitting to put it in those kinds of terms. And I know that Libeskind is another one that you like as well.
Yeah, yeah, and the I saw one of the posts, I think, on Instagram from Liebeskind's office with some photographs with Frank giving a tour of the Holocaust Museum, and I think it's been fun to see all kinds of practitioners at many different levels, right? People that either worked for Frank Gehry or were just colleagues in that sort of circle of friends that he sort of grew from his early career, trying to find his sort of voice in the field, and the just the various reactions, I guess, that people are having, all positive, just trying to put it all in context. And it actually caused me to stumble across, as I'm looking at your sketch, but also your drawings from your schoolwork, right, where you did, which we all do some precedent analysis studies when we're students. And so yours was Spiller. I had a classmate, that they got the Spiller house, and then I got a different project in France, I think, and I really wanted the Spiller house because it was local. But so it's nice to see that you were able to do a little dissection. I think I see behind the drawing that there's a model photo, so you built a model too of the house, and I'm sure that was a lot of fun. Framing studs and glass and all the exposed framing elements. But anyway, I sort of digress into the reminiscing of like all of our precedent analysis days. But I think the general sentiment of the field, right, trying to respond to this is captured well in the quote that you read. And I read the New York Times obituary, and then the very last sentence was a quote of Frank Gehry talking about how the practice is the practice of architecture wasn't necessarily the goal for him wasn't necessarily, I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember the exact words, but the goal wasn't about fame, but it was more about exploring the possibilities and seeing where he could take it, right, and being kind of honest about like the process, right, the craft, the process, right. I think a lot of people kind of look at his more recent buildings that are a little more complex curves and sort of very evocative shapes and forms and stuff like that. But if you go back, right, I mean, his career is so long. If you go back, all of this stuff is rooted in very pragmatic and practical planning strategies, right, and all the same things that we still try and teach now, right, which is efficiency and floor plan and plan to section, right, and adjacency of program and how you connect rooms and next to other functions that you need adjacent, that make the most sense. And then when there's a chance, obviously, as your budget grows, when you become a little more famous, as Frank Gehry became, right, you get a little more opportunity to express some of the art that the art of the design, right, and or the art of the architecture, which is what Frank Gehry was really kind of crafting and honing. Like, I think in general I mean, as a fellow USC alum, right? Frank Gehry was a grad of USC a long time before me, and so we studied at the same school, but just being in LA, you definitely have a different. I feel like you wind up with a little bit of a different appreciation because you're kind of surrounded by uh, the work that there's a lot of it in LA. Um, but well, I guess the point there is just the I don't know, this the a sort of personal appreciation for the various stages of his career and projects that evolved, right? I mean, there wasn't really, he never really settled on like a sort of stylistic approach that was the only approach to every job. I think there's a bit of uh, response in every job to the needs of the job. Uh, but and I'm sure that could be, you know, debated a little bit, but so.
Well, I think what I've always appreciated is sort of what you were saying about the exploration of things. Is that you're as a student, and you kind of talk about. Can you zoom up on that one, the one on the right? I think that that sort of analysis exploration image is one where that was you know it was a group project for one thing, which was crazy. We also had a really demanding professor, and for me, who wasn't even sure I wanted to be an architect at the time, I was still sort of figuring this out, and being exposed to a lot of different art and architecture, that I was not familiar with. I mean, mind you, I'm going to school in College Station, Texas, so I didn't have the luxury of USC and LA in my backyard, where I could, actually visit some of the things that I was being, told. I mean, I did, I have lived in multiple places, so it wasn't just sort of living in this, small place. So I did have, some wherewithal to architecture, but someone like this who we're studying his work, who's a practicing architect, who's clearly at sort of the leading edge of things, was just fascinating to me. And this project was obviously an earlier project, even at the time, but it was one where you could sort of see this idea of materials and see this idea of plan and section and axonometric and all these drawing techniques that I was learning in relationship to this discipline that were just amazing. And for us, because we couldn't even go to this building, I mean, I didn't see this building that I studied and did tons of drawings for and built the basswood model that came apart and was super intricate, with a classmate, who's still one of my closest friends. I never saw this building until 7 years later, on a trip to California. And so I think that sort of, connection to these types of projects and these types of people was really formative for me, because it was sort of doing that research. The professor in our case purposely picked projects that hadn't been documented really, really well at the time. So there was a plan, there was some elevations, there was some photographs, lots of photographs, but there wasn't necessarily this litany of drawings that were really accessible to us. So his sort of idea was you can analyze this building through the things that are available, and then really study it, and then develop these other drawings that you don't have access to. And so the one that you see there on the screen was one we didn't have access to, and was sort of the quote unquote bonus challenge drawing that we had to do, if we wanted to. And of course, you say challenge, and me and Rick were ready to accept that. So, this is a, pen and ink drawing. It's quite large too. It's shrunk down here. And then it's, in this particular case, this is just an old version of a portfolio where it's on sort of a kind of a mylar vellum sheet, over the top of black and white photographs of the basswood model, right? So the old sort of collage technique that we all used to deploy. And but that technique also came from looking at monographs of people like Tom Main and Michael Rotundi, and sort of the early monographs there, and other folks, Eric Owen Moss, and all these other LA architects, again, that we're only able to study from a distance. But Frank was somebody, I think, that took it to another level for us, as well as for other people who were even closer in practice to him. And I think that's why this moment, in his passing, gave people real opportunity to really kind of think about it, and and reminisce and all that, because I think there was a fandom of this individual who learned all the rules and then learned how to break them. And then sort of reset the table for a lot of folks with his interest in what a digital practice could, and even pushing the limits of that digital practice. It wasn't just about efficiency; it was about exploration, like you were saying. And I think that's sort of the world in which we've inherited now, which is great.
Yeah, this technique, actually, I did something similar. Based on like you said, the examples or precedents of Tom Main, Morphosis, Eric Owen Moss, how people were sort of mixing media, say, translucency, transparency, mylar, with drawing with model and rendering and those types of things, which was fun when you posted this. And like I said earlier, the sort of mandatory early stage precedent study aspects, which we still do a little bit, at least in the classes that I teach. It's not as intense, I don't think, as like it was when we were students. But perhaps maybe this coming spring, I can encourage some students to sort of follow me down the rabbit hole a little bit with paying a little more homage to Frank Gehry with a little more depth.
I have a question for you. When you sort of said that this reminded you, kind of in a reminiscing kind of way, about techniques that you employed, in terms of drawing and model building and whatnot. So there was also some things that I think are sort of throwaway. We don't do them anymore, but I think that they were sort of fun graphically. I think that they appear in a different way now, and sort of even the throwback of it is sort of fun. And the fact that people don't know it's a throwback when people do it is kind of funny. But you remember when, and a lot of this has to do with, I think, Morphosis, when they were illustrating a lot of their models, that had their site models had sort of a texture and a color and sort of a lot of poche to them, and then the model sort of sat within that environment. But there was an elaborateness about the scale of those models in some instances, and so you'd almost pose. You would pose. You'd have somebody who would pose with the model, not where it's about the person, but it's about the scale game, where you'd have somebody kind of in, and it's funny because I saw something, fairly recently where people were doing some of that again, and some of it also has to do with AI thinking that that's what an architect is, and it's sort of it's translated kind of in a funny kind of popular culture way where it's sort of come full circle. And I don't know what that means, but I just think it's humorous to me. It gives me a moment to have a little bit of a giggle. But sorry, I definitely kind of that was my LA moment. So
yeah,
forgive me. Deconstructivism. Definitely sign me up. I was all ready for that sort of exploration when I figured out that architecture was the thing I was going to do for the rest of my life. So
yeah, no problem. The the deconstructed. Yeah, you know, I looked up. I stumbled across usmodernist.com or .org, which has a whole page for Frank Gehry, and I went back. It's chronological, and if you go back to very early stuff, I mean, you can see stuff that is either influenced by or influenced Zaha, uh, you know, Erich Owen Moss, Morphosis, Coop Himmelblau, right? Wolf Pre. Like, there's so much language that sort of borrowed and transferred, or you know, in the architectural language, right, of the designs, and in some cases unbuilt work. But then in obviously some built cases, you know, I think Spiller is one that, you know, I I don't know how to describe it. I want to say it'll sound weird if I said the word timeless, but like uh, there's a certain attitude about it that you know, doesn't necessarily uh, get stuck in time. I think there's a lot of concern. I think maybe it just goes back to the way understanding program and space. You know, that the volumes all still work very well, right? You know, regardless of the sort of tectonic or material expression. And similarly, even though um,
Well, before you jump to the next piece, though, what I was going to say, though, you're absolutely right. There is a timeless to it, and I think that there is some DNA that is, you know, as you were describing that, I was thinking, I was like, you know, what is it about Spiller that's sort of so evocative? And I think it's simple. It's a complex building and it's a complex plan, but there's a simplicity to it, and there's also a simplicity to the envelope, which is also this balloon framing kind of allows for that. So there's the framing and then there's the skin. And in that framing, you know, like that ribbon window that you see right there, that ribbon window, I mean, that's, you know, that's international style, right? That's hearkening to, you know, things that the international style was doing in the 30s and 40s. And, you know, and then the actual opening at the porch almost has like a storefront kind of quality that's more like 1920s, you know, almost a 19, you know, the teens. And but then there's an asymmetry of where you kind of are able to cut that skin back where you need light at the staircase and sort of and it and I think that that's knowing the materials and that's knowing the construction and sort of taking the rules and then just breaking them just ever so slightly. That
yeah,
that's where I think the nuance of a project like this is one that didn't understand it completely at the time, but
yeah,
keep coming back to it
yeah,
and then see, like you say, you know, you see these other elements in other architects, that the through lines there.
yeah,
You were going to
yeah.
go talk about the beach now.
Oh yeah. Well, you know, just briefly, because it's only a few blocks away from Spiller, uh, is the Norton Beach House, um, pictured here, and what is funny, what I was trying to do here is that I photographed it from the Strand or the boardwalk, and then I went out, you know, took a walk on the beach, and then turned around at a couple of different times, right, to put it in context. I didn't show you everything here, but um, you know, the main concept behind the beach facing part of the building is this little box, you know, that is popped up on a stilt. And so it's not the same dimension, but it's supposed to allude to the lifeguard towers that are on the beach out front, right? So this house is, you know, back from the beach. The lifeguard towers closer to the water. Um, and honestly, these things haven't changed uh, since I left LA. These look exactly the same. Um, but then, you know, Frank Gehry, as a conceptual thinker, right? He he designed this component. The owner of the house that commissioned it was a former lifeguard, right? And so the whole point of this was like, well, why don't we put a little space that is it's kind of like a little studio office, um, just a lookout, a reading room, but it formally sort of picks up some of those lifeguard tower shapes and elevation and so on. And then if you look at the rest of the house, beyond, there's a lot of creativity in, granting view from many different levels and depths, so the rooms that go back far, back toward the road away from the beach, all are still, capturing, daylight and a view toward the beach, while this little tower, is, sticking out front. But that skinniness of it, I think opens the opportunity to bring in light, deeper into the site. And it's a little less, it's a little more, well, it's got some postmodern cues to it, right? The sort of composition of elements than say Spiller. But I think it's kind of interesting. So these photos, since I traveled 2 weeks ago, I was in LA and then Southern California visiting my brother. And so this picture is from 2 weeks ago, and this house was built in 1980, between 84 and 86, something like that, right? So this is like 40-year-old house, and it looks exactly the same as it did when
Right.
at least the last time I lived in LA. It looks exactly the same. So just kind of a nice and it's part of his earlier career when he did a lot more single family, although he still does. I found that he was still doing single family residential, although at a much different budget more recently. But
Right.
and then and so anyway, I don't know what your sentiments are on I'll let you talk about Norton if you're.
No. I mean, I love that project as well, because I think it's, what's nice about it is it's an easier access point for the public, in terms of the inventiveness of it. And though the backstory of how a project like that gets developed, and one could almost make that connection to the narrative and say, well, yeah, of course, this is a beach house. There needs to be some relationship between the architecture of the beach, and that environment and the context, to the actual building itself. And what better way than to have a lookout, in your house, to admire the ocean view. And what's the lookout on the beach? It's these lifeguard towers, and sort of, playing with that structure in a bit of an irreverent way, but not going to the point where it becomes comical. And I think that that's sort of the edge that you're sort of brushing up against, that, Pomo, really almost gets sort of in a little bit absurd for me. And I don't ever think of Gary's work ever kind of getting into that, where ornament is added to a project, to kind of, to exaggerate a point. And I think that that's sort of where the aesthetic of Pomo, is too much for my taste. I mean, I understand sort of the theoretical kind of aspects, Venturi kind of learning from Las Vegas, Denise Scott Brown doing that complexity contradiction studies, all those things. I understand that, but I think it has had its time and place, and sort of in architecture as sort of a reaction to things. But I don't necessarily the work we're talking about here. I think this is about materiality. I think it's about program. I think it's the way you described it, and I think it leads to the sketch that's above it, that I did, more recently here in the last couple of days. Is I was thinking about this idea of, um, I mean, he was a Canadian architect who grew up in the U.S. And what's more Canadian than hockey? And when I was doing this sort of deep dive into Spiller and some of his earlier work, and trying to get my hands on anything that I could read about at the time, I learned that he was doing furniture, and it's like, oh yeah, well, I've heard architects do furniture, and they do this other stuff, and there's industrial design, and we were learning about bentwood furniture and sort of the history of bentwood furniture and sort of the technology of certain, materiality of different furniture designs, and how that evolved over time. And of course, who better but somebody who understands the hockey stick and understands that you heat the hockey stick, to kind of change the angle of the blade, to your own tastes as a player. And that sort of technology and sort of DIY-ness of it, gets translated into a series of furniture that he did, that is all named after, hockey references. So this one is the cross-check chair. There's also the hat trick chair, and so these beautiful bentwood, pieces that he did in the early 90s, are pretty amazing. So I found a photograph of him that was sort of a promotional piece. He's wearing his Red Wings jersey, which I thought you would like. And, Frank's there in his skates with his stick. And then one of the chairs is there in front of him.
Yeah. Thanks for pulling us back to the sketch, because these chairs, in particular, the bent wood ones, he did a lot of different uh, material and form experiments with furniture, but the sort of thinness and the lightness of this bent wood, and I think there was I think I sat in one once back in LA days, but it doesn't. I mean, it's very sturdy, right? I mean, it's not a flimsy, piece of art. It actually is quite supportive, and just like you were saying, right? The hockey stick has its inherent properties of structure, form, and flexibility, right? As a performance tool, and I think, yeah, it's all a part of like
Well,
the mindset, right?
yeah, well, I mean, it's like, I was born in Montreal, and I never played hockey, but come from a hockey family. I've got hockey sticks that my dad. I've got
Oh
too
yeah.
many hockey sticks that my dad had, and dad still has a bunch of his hockey sticks. And heard too many stories of hockey everything. And but one of the things that sort of stuck out for me was, and I didn't quite understand it as a kid, when they would talk about, they would manipulate these sticks. They would put them in water, and they would heat them up, and then they would tape them up, and then he's like, some guys really like to have a real big curve on it, and some like to have it a little bit flat, but it was a way that they were sort of playing this magician on the ice with their equipment, with their tools. And that experimentation, I think, was sort of what stood out to me at that age, and sort of like, oh well, now I understand. And of course I had all these examples, and I played with them when I was a little kid and stuff. But I think when it I had this sort of immediate callback when I saw these images of these pieces of furniture, and then as a student, as an architecture student at the time, seeing these kinds of things and learning about, like you said, his easy edges furniture and cardboard, you know all that stuff. It's sort of mind-blowing for somebody who's grappling with all this information as a designer, right? And I think that was the thing. It was formative years for us, but then sort of experiencing it, and then experiencing those buildings later in life, and just being a big fan, I think is pretty exciting. I did get the first time I sat in one of these cross check chairs. They had those, and they had the hat trick one, when I visited Paris at that recently had completed the American Center in Paris. And so they had some in the lobby, just like you can sit in them, Like, just, you know, of course, we're just going to furnish this with Frank Gehry furniture. It's like, yeah, of course. Absolutely.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah. And excuse me. And the and then lastly, to sort of kind of wrap this up a bit, because I'm sure we will probably weave in. I mean, I know I will probably sort of make a lot of allusions and callbacks in the next few episodes, just because it's front of mind again. But the on the last day of class, I just wanted to add this in here. Given that we are Coffee Sketch Podcast, I'm sure some of the students will be listening. I asked them to use the digital whiteboard that we use for the class and provide their own Frank Gehry sketch, either of a building that they liked or anything, but in the style of Frank Gehry. So you got a few Fred and Ginger, the dancing house building. We got Opus, which is actually kind of a neat one, a little bit more recent. This one's mine. I did the Disney Hall one, and then one of my favorites that I've not been to, the Marquis de Riscal winery in Spain, and then my student put a little figurine sliding down the facade. But I just wanted to show these off because I enjoyed asking the students to have a little fun with it. This is a pretty nice one too, and some of these kind of remind you, kind of going back to your early statement of playing himself on The Simpsons, right? Some of these have the sort of cartoony effect of like the Simpsons drawings, but not in a bad way, but in a fun, a sort of a friendly jab, or a friendly, humorous, like a humorous homage, I suppose, to Frank Gehry. So, I just wanted to capture these, and I don't know if you had any
well, and
ones that you like out of.
No, I was just going to say, as sort of a closing thought. Yeah, and as a closing thought, I love the fact that you did that as a prompt. I think it's a great way to kind of engage in a and again, it's dialogue, right? So you have this cultural touch point and moment in time, where somebody like that, has an impact, and then, is, and he's no longer with us, but his work is, his impact is. And I think in that moment, it's kind of a great way to say, hey, well, why don't you sketch something? And, it's sort of like we just are coming off of Arkinktober, where we had prompts that were sort of generating, in an artificial sense, kind of a way to kind of engage the conversation, right? And so, the same thing can be true about events in time. Like, let's talk about this, and then in talking about it, we actually do the sketch. So I love the fact, even from this sort of zoomed out distance, you can sort of see the profile of these very, very, very simplistic drawings, but they're, the buildings, right? I mean, Fred and Ginger jumps off the page there in green. I mean, that's just like that, and, and then you sort of, as you're zooming up, I can see there's the MIT campus, there's the Disney concert hall. I saw the winery. I didn't know the name of it, but I knew it was the winery. I think that it's, I even see, I think there's one of those looks like sort of the Seattle Museum, which was the Experience. What was it? The Experience Music Project for Jimi Hendrix, and then sort of became something else. But it's, I think that all, that's the and I think that what that sketch also allowed is the freedom to, in future episodes, I saw some, documentary like, clips, and was reminded that and ideas into it, and like you said, in work when he was doing more of the sculptural forms in the model shop, which was infamous in maybe multiple ways, um, for good and bad reasons. But what was interesting was
Uh-oh. Oh my God. We lost Jamie. We lost Jamie somehow. All right. Hold on a sec. Hold on. See if we get him back here.